The envelope was cream-colored, thick, the kind that costs more per sheet than most people spend on lunch. I turned it over in my hands twice before I opened it, standing right there in the hallway outside my apartment, still wearing my work badge from the hospital. I had just pulled a 12-hour shift. My feet were throbbing. My hair smelled faintly of antiseptic, the way it always did after a long day in the ICU. My cat, Oliver, was already at the door when I stepped inside, weaving between my ankles, meowing in that low, insistent way he had whenever I'd been gone too long. I set my bag down, scratched behind his ears, and finally slid my finger under the flap of the envelope. It was a wedding invitation. My brother was getting married. I stood in my kitchen and read every line of that card twice, the way you reread something when the words don't quite arrange themselves into meaning. His name was there. His fiancée's name was there. The venue, a restored vineyard outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, a 4-hour drive from where I lived in Richmond. The date, the second Saturday of October, 11 months away. There was no +1 line. That was fine. I wasn't seeing anyone. But there was something else missing. It took me until the third read to realize what it was. The invitation said, together with their families. There were my parents' names, printed in that looping script, font people use for weddings. There was his fiancée's parents' names. There was even the name of his fiancée's grandmother, listed as a special acknowledgement at the bottom. My name was nowhere on that card, not as family, not as a guest with a special role, not anywhere. I set the invitation down on the counter next to the fruit bowl. Oliver jumped up and sniffed the corner of it. I poured myself a glass of water and stood at the window and watched the last strip of orange light disappear behind the apartment building across the street. I told myself I was reading too much into it. I told myself it was a printing oversight. I told myself a lot of things that night. The thing about being the older sibling in a family like mine is that you learn very early how to explain away the things that hurt. You get good at finding alternate interpretations. You become fluent in a language of excuses that aren't yours to make. I was 28 years old. I was an ICU nurse. I had not lived at home since I was 18, when I packed 2 suitcases and drove myself to college on a partial academic scholarship, working 25 hours a week at the campus library to cover the rest. My parents had helped some, when they could. I never asked for more than they offered. My brother was 6 years younger than me. He was funny and charming the way people are, when they've never had to work very hard for anyone's affection. My parents had always been softer with him, quicker to laugh, quicker to forgive. I noticed it as a child, and filed it away in the part of myself I rarely opened. When he was accepted to the University of South Carolina, the school he'd wanted since he was 15, my parents sat me down at the kitchen table during one of my visits and told me they didn't have enough saved to cover his tuition. I was 24. I had been working as an ICU nurse for 2 years by then, living carefully, saving consistently. I had a small emergency fund and a longer-term savings account I'd been building since my first paycheck. My mother cried. Not dramatically, just quietly. The way she did when something genuinely worried her. My father sat with his hands folded on the table and didn't say much, which was how he communicated that something mattered to him more than he could put into words. I said I would help. I worked out a number with them, a monthly transfer that would cover the gap between what financial aid provided and what his tuition actually cost. We never signed anything. It was family. I didn't think we needed to. For 4 years, every first of the month, I transferred money into my parents' account. I didn't bring it up at holidays. I didn't reference it in conversation. I didn't keep a running tally on paper, though I kept one in my head the way you do when something costs you more than money. My brother graduated 2 springs ago. He thanked my parents in his graduation speech. He thanked his friends. He thanked his fiancée, who he had been dating since junior year. He thanked his professors. He did not thank me. I told myself it was an oversight. I stood at that kitchen window until it was fully dark outside, Oliver pressing his warm weight against my shin, and I thought about all the times I had told myself something was an oversight. The next morning, I texted my mother. I kept it casual. Hey, got the invitation, so excited for the wedding. Quick question. Is there a reason my name isn't listed with the family on the card? She responded 4 hours later. Oh, honey. We had to keep the wording simple. You know how formal invitations are. I stared at that message for a long time. I knew exactly how formal invitations were. I had attended enough weddings among my friends and coworkers to understand that the names printed on a wedding invitation are a choice. Every single word on that card is a choice someone made deliberately, usually more than once, because invitation proofs are reviewed before they go to print. I typed back, "Sure, totally understand. Just wanted to check." That was the version of me that had been running things for a long time. The one who asked softly, accepted the answer quietly, and moved forward without making anything difficult. I made plans to attend. I requested the weekend off from the hospital 5 months in advance, which took some maneuvering. I bought a dress emerald green, the kind of dress you buy when you want to feel like yourself at an event where you're not entirely sure where you belong. I made a hotel reservation at a place 20 minutes from the vineyard because I had not been offered a room in the block my parents reserved for family. I found that out by accident when my aunt mentioned in a group family text that she loved her room in the family block. I scrolled back through that thread and confirmed I had never been included in the original message where my mother shared the reservation link. My mother, when I mentioned it gently, said the block was already full by the time she thought to send it to me. I booked my own hotel and did not say anything else about it. 2 months before the wedding, I drove home for my parents' anniversary dinner. It was a small thing, just the 4 of us. My brother and his fiancée, me. We went to the Italian place on Maple Street they'd been going to since before I was born, where the owner still called my father by his first name. Somewhere between the salad and the main course, my brother's fiancée started talking about the seating chart. She was warm and meticulous, the kind of person who approaches everything with a spreadsheet and a color-coding system, which I actually respected. She pulled up a photo of the seating layout on her phone and slid it across the table toward my parents. I leaned in without thinking, the way you do. My brother looked up. Something shifted in his expression just slightly, just for a moment, but I had been reading that face my entire life. "We're actually still finalizing a few things," he said, and tilted the phone back toward himself before I could really see it. I picked up my water glass. I took a slow sip. I looked at the painting on the wall behind my father's head, a landscape of the Amalfi Coast, slightly faded, that had been hanging there for as long as I could remember. After dinner, in the parking lot, while my parents and his fiancée were saying goodbye to the owner inside, my brother and I stood next to his car. The night was cool. I could smell someone's fireplace from somewhere down the street. "Hey," I said, "am I at a table with you guys? Or—" "We had to make some tough calls with the seating," he said. He didn't look at me. He was looking at his keys. "The vineyard has a capacity limit, and we really prioritize the people we're closest to right now." I heard every word he said. I also heard everything he didn't say. "Right," I said. "You understand, right? It's just logistics." I looked at the side of his face. He was 22 when I started sending that money every month. He was 26 when I sent the last transfer, 2 weeks before his graduation. He had deposited every one of those payments into the same account that paid for his textbooks and his apartment and the spring break trip he took junior year. "Of course," I said. "Logistics." My parents came out through the restaurant door, laughing at something the owner had said. My mother linked her arm through my father's. My brother put on a smile so quickly it looked like a reflex. I drove home that night, with Oliver on the passenger seat. He had come with me, the way he always did when I made longer drives, settled into his carrier with his chin on the mesh door, and somewhere, on the dark stretch of interstate between the city and my apartment, I stopped explaining things away. I thought about 4 years of the first of the month. I thought about the graduation speech. I thought about the invitation with everyone's name but mine. I thought about the seating chart tilted away from me, across a dinner table. I thought about the word logistics. I wasn't angry in the loud way. I want to be clear about that. I didn't cry. I didn't grip the steering wheel. I just felt something settle, the way a building settles when the last structural decision has been made, when the concrete has finally cured and there's no adjusting it anymore. Oliver made a small sound from his carrier. "I know," I said out loud. When I got home, I didn't do anything impulsive. I made tea. I sat at my kitchen table with Oliver in my lap, and I thought very carefully about what I actually wanted to do. I had a meeting scheduled with my financial planner for the following week. A quarterly check-in I kept mostly out of habit. I decided to move some things around before that meeting. The transfers to my parents' account, I had continued sending a smaller monthly amount even after my brother graduated, a kind of informal help with expenses contribution. I'd started because it made me feel like a good daughter. I logged into my bank that night, and I set an end date on the recurring transfer. Not in anger, just in clarity. I also drafted a message. I didn't send it right away. I wrote it, saved it, and slept on it for 3 days. On the third day, I read it again, changed 2 sentences, and sent it to my brother. Hey, I've been thinking about the wedding, and I've realized it makes more sense for me not to come. I don't say this to cause drama or to make your day about anything other than you and your fiancé. I say it because I think we both know I haven't really been included in the way family is included. I love you. I hope it's everything you want it to be. I did not mention the money. I did not mention the invitation. I did not mention the seating chart or the hotel block or the graduation speech. I stated a fact, and I expressed something true, and then I stopped. His response came 40 minutes later. What are you talking about? You're being so dramatic. Mom is going to be really upset. I noticed that the center of his response was my mother's reaction, not his own. I put my phone face down on the table. Oliver jumped up and walked across my forearms and settled himself on the corner of my laptop, which he did regularly and unapologetically. And I sat there in the quiet of my apartment and felt, for the first time in a long time, like I was standing on ground that actually belonged to me. My mother called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I let that go, too. On the third call I answered, because avoiding it wasn't going to make it simpler. Your brother is devastated, she said. She skipped hello entirely. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. You are going to ruin his wedding with this. I'm not going to his wedding, Mom. I'm not ruining anything. I'm removing myself quietly. After everything we've done for you, I let the silence sit for a moment after that. Mom, I said, I need to say something, and I need you to hear it without responding right away. Can you do that? A pause. Fine. For 4 years, I transferred money to you every single month to cover the gap in his tuition. I never asked you to pay me back. I never brought it up at holidays. I never made him feel indebted. I did it because I wanted to help, and because I love this family. I kept my voice even. I'm not bringing this up as a transaction. I'm bringing it up because I need you to understand that I have not been treated like someone who belongs in this family. Not on that invitation. Not in the hotel block. Not at the seating chart table. And I'm done finding reasons why that's okay. My mother was quiet for a moment. You always make everything about yourself, she said. I closed my eyes. Oliver was on my lap by then, warm and steady, purring in that low, continuous way he had. I'm going to go, Mom, I said. I love you. I hung up. My phone rang 4 more times that night. My brother, my mother, my father, which surprised me, he rarely called directly. My mother again. I turned it face down and watched a documentary about ocean conservation and fell asleep on the couch with Oliver on my chest. In the morning, there were 11 text messages. I read them the way you read something you've already emotionally prepared for, not with shock, but with a kind of tired recognition. There were versions of how could you, and you're tearing this family apart, and one from my brother that said after everything Mom and Dad did for you, you're really going to do this. I read that last one twice. After everything Mom and Dad did for me, I had paid my own way through college. I had taken out my own loans for the portions my scholarship didn't cover and paid them off myself within 4 years of graduating. I had never asked my parents for a deposit, a car, a cosign. I had given money, quietly and without record, for 4 years, to bridge a gap for someone who had not once in a public or private moment acknowledged it. I did not respond to any of the messages. I went to work. I took care of my patients with the particular kind of focused attention I had built over years, the ability to be fully present in a room that required everything from me, to set aside whatever was happening in my own life and simply do the work in front of me with steady hands. I was good at that. I had always been good at that. In the break room at 7 in the morning, my colleague, A travel nurse from Atlanta, who'd been at our unit for the past 6 months, poured me a coffee without being asked and said, "You look like someone who needs to not talk about it yet." "Very much, yes," I said. She nodded and sat across from me, and we talked about nothing important for 20 minutes, and it was exactly what I needed. I thought a lot about belonging during those weeks, about how long I had confused proximity with belonging, about how I had been present at every family event for 28 years and had somehow spent most of them watching from a slight remove, laughing at the right moments, filling my plate and washing dishes and driving the distances, and never quite naming the feeling that I was a guest at something I was supposed to be a member of. The wedding happened on the second Saturday of October. I knew because my mother sent a group family text at 7 in the morning with a photo of the venue in the golden early light, the vineyard rows stretching out behind a white arch hung with flowers. I was at the farmer's market when the photo came through. I was buying a small bunch of dahlias from a woman who grew them in her backyard, 2 towns over deep copper ones, the color of autumn in its best mood. I bought a jar of wildflower honey too, because it smelled like something good was still happening somewhere. I went home and put the dahlias in a glass jar on the kitchen windowsill. I made a real breakfast, eggs and toast and sliced tomatoes, and ate it at my kitchen table with Oliver sitting across from me on the opposite chair, which I technically wasn't supposed to allow, but had long since stopped enforcing. I did not look at my phone much that day. When I finally checked it in the late afternoon, there were photos in the family, thread the ceremony, the reception, the cake, the first dance. My brother was smiling the way he smiled in every photo, with his whole face. His bride looked genuinely beautiful. The vineyard looked exactly as the morning photo had promised. I looked at those photos for a minute or two. There was something in me that still loved my brother, that probably always would not blindly, not in the way that required me to make myself small, but in the plain, factual way that love can exist even when it doesn't have a place to live anymore. I put the phone down. I spent the rest of that evening reading a book I'd been meaning to get to for weeks. Oliver settled across my feet. The dahlias caught the lamplight from the windowsill. Outside, the October wind was doing what October wind does, pulling the last leaves from the oak tree in the courtyard below. At 10:30 that night, my phone lit up. My brother. I let it ring. He called again. And again. By midnight, my phone log showed 23 missed calls between my brother, my mother, and one from my father. By the time I woke up Sunday morning, that number was 41. I lay there in the early gray light, Oliver stretched out beside me, and I scrolled through the log with a feeling that was not satisfaction exactly, but something quieter and more permanent. The feeling of a decision that had been fully made, that could not be unmade, that didn't need to be defended or explained or softened. My brother had called because, sometime during the wedding reception, he had tried to give a toast that involved thanking the people who had helped make his life possible. His fiancée's mother, apparently, had stopped him to ask why his sister hadn't come. And in front of everyone, he had been unable to come up with an answer that didn't lead somewhere he didn't want to go in public. I found this out not from him, but from my cousin, who texted me the next day. "Don't know what happened, but your brother was a mess at the reception, and I think it had something to do with you. Hope you're okay." I appreciated that she asked. I was okay. I was more than okay. I was standing in my kitchen in the morning, in the quiet before the day started, watching Oliver chase a dust mote across the floor with the absolute conviction of a creature who is entirely certain of his place in the world. I thought about everything I had built without anyone watching. My career, my apartment, my small, clean life. The savings account I had been rebuilding since the transfers stopped. The friendships I'd maintained through every long shift, every holiday drive, every moment I'd invested in people who actually showed up. The Saturday morning farmers market trips, the dahlias on the windowsill, the cat who greeted me at the door every single day without condition or calculation. I made coffee. I opened the windows slightly, just enough to let the cool morning air come in. Somewhere down the street, someone was mowing their lawn, even though it was barely past 8. I had one unread message from my brother that I hadn't opened yet. I opened it then, finally, standing at the window with my coffee. "We need to talk. A lot came up last night. I think there are things I owe you that I haven't said." I read it twice. Then I put the phone down on the counter. beside the fruit bowl, beside the jar of dahlias. I did not respond immediately. Not because I was being cruel, not because I wanted him to feel the weight of waiting, but because I had spent so many years responding immediately, adjusting quickly, smoothing things over before I'd even had a chance to figure out what I actually felt. I had spent so long being available to everyone else's timing. I finished my coffee. I fed Oliver. I showered and got dressed and went to the grocery store because I was out of eggs. It was an ordinary Sunday. And it was mine in a way that ordinary Sundays hadn't been for a long time, not claimed by guilt, not shadowed by the low hum of wondering what I'd done wrong, or what I should do differently, or how I could make myself easier to include. I walked through the produce section of the store and put things in my basket slowly, the way I did when I had nowhere to be. I bought the eggs and also some good cheese and a bar of dark chocolate I didn't need but wanted. At the checkout, the man in front of me was buying flowers, yellow sunflowers, the simple grocery store kind, still cheerful despite their ordinary origin, and he smiled when he caught me looking. "For my wife?" he said. "No reason, just because." "Those are the best reasons," I said. Outside, the October sky was wide and blue, and the trees along the street were every color that trees turn when they finally decided to let go. I drove home with the windows down. On my kitchen table, when I got back, my phone had 3 more notifications. I looked at them without hurry. 2 more missed calls, and 1 more message from my brother, shorter than the first. "I'm sorry. I mean it." Oliver came and sat beside my grocery bags on the table, which he also technically was not supposed to do, and looked at me with the patient, certain expression that animals have when they've decided you are theirs. I picked him up. He allowed it in the way that cats allow things on his own terms, for exactly as long as he decided. I stood at the window and looked at the oak tree and its last leaves. I thought about what sorry means when it comes after silence, when it arrives in the shape of 41 missed calls, when it follows years of presence that was never quite acknowledged. I thought about whether I would call my brother back, and when, and what I would say. I didn't have all those answers yet, but I knew this. I would not be explaining anything away. I would not be finding a softer interpretation. I would not be the first to make it easy. The dahlias were still on the windowsill. The honey was in the cabinet. The morning was turning into afternoon in its slow, unhurried way. I was 28 years old. I had built my own life with my own hands, quietly, without applause. I had given more than I'd been asked to give, and asked for less than I'd been owed. And now, for the first time in longer than I could measure, I was not waiting to be chosen. I had already chosen myself, and that, I was learning, was where everything else would have to begin.